since we're talking Mk8 GTI, let's jump into a few things. So this came up recently. Someone was asking about dyno chart smoothness. So before we're gonna show a graphic, but there was some talk online that people were comparing our advertised dyno charts to Unitronics, and because Unitronics lines looked smoother, there was this assumption that their tune must be smoother. So that's just not true. I'm not saying Unitronics tune isn't smooth. What I'm saying is you cannot tell how smooth a tune is necessarily from looking at manipulated, chart lines like what Unitronic and 034Motorsport and other companies produce.
Yeah, I mean the biggest offender is honestly the OEMs. Like if you look at factory,
they're not worse. They have very smooth.
Yeah, if you look at a dyno plot from a manufacturer on when they release a new model, it's like 4 or 5 points is about all you're gonna get. You can get where the torque starts, where the torque plateau kind of ends, and where it falls off at red line.
Yeah,
and that's literally it. It's like the most data deprived chart you could imagine.
So if you ever made a chart in Excel, or you took a basic math class, if you remember from high school or college, there is a function when it comes to graphing called smoothing. And when you smooth a graph, you reduce the amount of data points to create a line that's possibly more representative of the information you're looking to represent.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with smoothing, but if you don't smooth enough, the line isn't going to really represent what you need it to. And if you over smooth it, it's not going to represent it either. So what's the most smooth line you can get? It's 1 data point, which isn't even a line. So 2 data points would be a very smooth data set, and you'd have a straight line between 2 data points. You could do that with a dyno chart. You could have peak torque, onset, and torque out red line, and it would be, it would basically be a triangle. But by smoothing the data, you create something that's more representative of what you actually feel. So when it comes to a dyno chart, what are we trying to create? We're trying to create lines that represent to you, the person who's driving, approximately what you would feel as you accelerate through the torque curve, through the horsepower curve. So let's play this. So sure. I had Nate take our current advertised lines, which is what you're seeing now, and then this is a smoothed version of that. These are both the same tune.
It's the same data, honestly.
Same exact data with some data manipulated, but it's the same set of data.
It's not manipulated. It's just removing some points here and there.
Well, that's the manipulation.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but the core data, the numbers are not changed.
Same data set, but with a different treatment of the data to produce these graphs. So, this is just, we're just showing you. We could have released this. We chose not to because we felt like what we released was more accurate or indicative of what you're actually going to feel when you drive.
And same with the OEM one. If you look at the OEM number on this, like that's not as tabletop flat as the OEM one.
The OEM one.
It's on the stock one's smooth as well on it.
Okay, yeah.
The bottom.
Well, no, what Audi releases.
Yeah, I'll try and find that out. I'm going to look that up.
It's not to say that Unitronic did a bad thing. That's not what we're saying.
Oh, we're just
they just chose to represent their tune using a different amount of smoothing than we did. Now, keep in mind the data that comes out of the dyno is literally a cloud of data. So you get a jagged line like this that goes across the car.
I was actually.
It's not even a line.
About to talk about it. So I mean, just think of how an internal combustion engine works, and you cannot dyno a car without smooth. I mean, it is literally, these combustion events are the only thing that is, making that power. So it's a huge, seesawing thing.
So what comes out of the dyno is indecipherable, basically. It's not useful to the human eye or brain. And so you basically average out those extreme points, and you create a line that goes through the data that's representative of what you think the data means. So anyways, this is just simple. If some of you guys are probably like laughing that this is so simple because you deal with data and analysis in your jobs and your day-to-day life, or you learned about this in high school. But there were some people who genuinely thought that this must mean the unitronic tune is smoother.
And
That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's a battle we face because, like, we can just give you the, just the more representative data, which may not look as pretty, or we can pretty it up more, but then it doesn't necessarily. It's not what you're going to see on a dyno. And if you've seen any of the dynos out in the real world of these two tunes, they look much more like our chart.
We strive to give an accurate representation of what the engine is doing. And what the engine is doing is not necessarily the result of our tuning. Engines are imperfect. There's resonances, there's massive changes and swings in volumetric efficiency. In some cases, power would normally drop off, and then the cams and the valves are adjusting to bring that power back. So you might see a small dip and then an increase. It doesn't mean that you got a dip, it means you got an increase. But what comes out of an engine is not smooth, like a straight line. It's not even close. So,
anyways, cars, you would get a much smoother line. Even those have a frequency.
They will. Yeah.
So yeah.
No, because there are individual magnetic pulses that drive them.
It's just the resolution you're looking at the data.
Yeah, you should just be skeptical when you see an overly smooth line, and if you see an overly jagged line, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's better either. I would say what we do, we strive to offer the most.
And this data is like straight off the dyno. I mean, this is not it's not manipulated. It's what you're seeing is what's coming off the dyno.
All right, next question is someone's asking stage 1 TCU. There was some confusion about what our stage 1 TCU is. So, what we offer as a stage 1 TCU is not a full-featured TCU file. So, Racing Line and Unitronic both offer full-featured TCU files. These full-featured TCU files augment the shift speed, the shift RPM. They add additional features for launching and things like that. Our stage 1 doesn't get, you have to buy those. Those aren't free, right? Those are like $500-600. What we do now, our stage 1 is free. If you buy the ECU, you get it for free. We don't sell it separately, and it simply modifies the TCU to coordinate with the ECU that the ECU can make more torque. The factory TCU dictates the peak torque that the engine can produce as a way to protect itself. And so we go in and reprogram that, and so that the TCU and ECU work in tandem to help produce peak power and torque. We will be releasing a stage 2 TCU, which will be more comparable to some of the other companies' stage 1s, and that's imminent. And that will be our stage 2 TCU will be a file that's being sold. Again, if you bought our stage 1, you'll get a discount on that when we release it. Let us know if you have any more questions about that, but that's where the extra power comes from, and that's why our ECU tunes seem so much cheaper, is because we're giving a free TCU that unlocks the additional torque. If we didn't do the TCU stage 1 like we do, peak torque would be severely limited. How much extra strain does stage 1 add to the car? It does add some more strain. That's good. It does add some more strain. This is not a new thing. The kind of stage 1 power levels that we're talking about, we, the tuning industry, have been doing for 20, 30 years now. I'm not aware of any issues or failures or accelerated wear that you'll notice. You could do stage 1 of the car and you could drive it for 150,000 miles, and I don't think you'll notice much difference. Does mean that the factory turbo will be working harder. It'll be producing more boost. The power that we're producing is well within the strength and wear limits of the factory engine and accessory components. So we can't necessarily dictate exactly how much more strain or wear, but what we can say and promise is that it's well within an acceptable range and anyone would be happy with. All right. You want to throw that up?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
It's a bunch of hoops.
All right. We found the factory.
This is a factory example from a Gen 3 like E8 1.8. But there's
6 points on the torque. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the horsepower.
I'm assuming they matched me.
Yeah. Fuel economy on 91, 93, and E85. So, under the same driving conditions, fuel economy should be identical. We do not hurt the fuel economy, under normal driving conditions. So if you take both cars on the freeway, you're gonna get the same mileage. Now, where you will use more fuel is under power, because the engine is producing more power. The only way it can produce more power is with more torque. E85, you will get approximately 20 to 30% worse mileage, but it's that much cheaper and way more fun. But E85 is pretty much a wash. It's cheaper, but you don't get as much mileage out of it, and that's just simply based on this stoichiometric ratio, how much energy that fuel can produce. It's not as efficient or energy filled, energy dense as gasoline. Made from corn, like corn grass and shit like that.
Sure,
it's amazing it produces any power at all. Can I tune my car safely even if my TCU is not supported yet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so especially.
I mean, the torque will be limited.
It's limited, but on the 91 and 93, it's not that limited. Like it's
well, and
it's almost on. I mean,
what you're trying to say is it's limited, but the car is still a lot.
It's a lot faster than stock, and there's no real downside to it. We don't manipulate any of the torque output from the ECU. The TCU shifts fine. We've had no issues.
But the question is
honestly either file the high torque or the lower torque output on the stock TCU. I haven't heard of any issues with either. Or
the question is, can it be done safely? The answer is absolutely yes. All the tunes that we offer are safe. We do not sell any unsafe tunes. Now, granted, our 800 horsepower, B9S4 tune is not quite as safe, just because it's so much further stressed
your margins get
than our stage 1 file. But it's still a safe. For a stage 3, it's as safe as you're going to get.
Oh my god! All right, I have a This is a quick, what I could find file.
Right. This is a factory Volkswagen dyno chart.
Yeah, this is a Gen 3 1.8, but that's what I could dig up offhand. But
and I would say actually this tune, generally our stage 1 tunes drive smoother than stock. So even though those lines are smoother than ours, our tune drives smoother. Again, that's 6 data points on the torque curve and 5 on the horsepower curve. And that's what you get, a series of straight lines, because of the sheer lack of data. It doesn't mean that's definitely not what the engine is doing. But
that's just an example of how
Volkswagen, right? I mean, they're putting this out in the world, and they just want a million people to see it. It works for the purposes that they need.
Yeah, and if you look at the chart we did earlier too, the numbers are identical. So if you look at your peak numbers, you look at the where the peak number is, what it is, it's all the same. It's just how that data is kind of displayed. And I can't think of a single, unless there's something really drastic with it, but where someone was nitpicking over anything other than the peak numbers, basically, it comes off.
Someone's asking, is start-stop memory added?
Yep.
Yes, the car will remember start-stop settings, just like
a bunch of other files that we do. But yeah, it is enabled and should remember where you last said.
And then we did the regret one.
Yep.
On the Mark 8, there are different drive settings. Does your tune retain different drive settings?
Absolutely.
Yes, all the drive modes are retained. Performance is represented in all the different modes.
Yep.
Pathway for future mods. So we will be releasing a stage 2 ECU, which means a high flow cat tune. I think initial testing looks good for that.
Yep.
Flex fuel is something we're working on and we plan to release in the future. For the time being, you just load your tank with the 85, which is pretty nice. Golf R turbo on the GTI is something we're working on.
It's underway.
And hybrid turbo stuff is in its infancy, but it is something we're working on. Yep. It'd be interesting to push these motors to see, how far they can go. With a 4-cylinder, you're limited. You only have 4 connecting rods versus a 6-cylinder. But if the pass is any indication, we should be able to get over 400 450 foot-pounds of torque.
Yep. And that is something I was actually just talking with the guys this morning about. That is, kind of where do we draw that line? It's one of those things you've always got to kind of lean on past experiences and go from there. But we're pretty much, I want to say, torque-wise, how much more we want to push through these.
Yeah, and I mean, the good news is in the future we can increase horsepower.
Yeah.
Torque may be kind of capped, but horsepower, sky's the limit, as long as we kind of stay below that torque limit. Which means, we can still produce some really fast, fun cars with stock engines.
Yes.
But definitely, if you want to get serious about tuning these rods, they're definitely in your future.
Yeah, we've already got more turbo than the rods can deal with now. So
yeah. How much E85 fueling headroom is left on the Mk8 GTI platform if going hybrid or bigger turbo in the future? Any fueling products in the works? Will port fueling be a thing on the Mk8?
We're pushing it more and more. Right now, it's looking really good. We have no concerns with the GTI currently on E85.
It has headroom. We will be releasing a high pressure fuel pump.
It's the newer gen 350 bar pump, so it does have a good deal more just power potential than the older pump.
Interesting thing about this pump is it's a sealed unit. You cannot swap out the piston like you can in all the other FSI pumps from the past. So as far as I know, we will be the only company on the market with a high flow fuel pump option. That'll be interesting to see how other tuners deal with that.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be as straightforward as the old stuff.
And then I think absolutely port fuel injection will be a thing.
Yep.
Probably not real soon. We'll put it off as long as we can. But
and thankfully, there's more overhead, so we've got a lot more room to play with on the stock system right now.
Pretty much anything you've seen for the Mk7 is going to happen for the Mk8 too. Yes. Same exact concept. Is the Mk7 Golf R IS38 a better turbo than the Mk8 GTI Garrett? It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. I think the IS38 might have a little bit more up top, but I mean, they're honestly not far off with what they're putting down at the wheels.
Do you change anything with launch control on Mk8 Stage 1?
Just a little bit in the way that it engages. I think the launch point is slightly changed based on pedal input. I'd have to go back and look quick. I don't have my notes in front of me on that. But yeah, the launch isn't generally the problem on the GTI. You can blow the tires off that thing, so it's not more.
You don't need a lot more power on launch.
Yeah, and front wheel drive cars are so sensitive too. Like you can do a perfect launch control setup for one car, and then it's just going to be useless on another car. It'll either be too much or not enough. So that is a tricky one. We are going to do more like we have before with just more granular control on the pedal. What launch power you can lead with.
Do you guys warranty your tunes if the tune itself causes damage? I have a Stage 1 for my Mk8 GTI. It's my first time tuning anything and want to get all the correct info I can before I get myself into this. Yeah, we stand behind our products. We stand behind our tunes. Honestly, I don't know if there's ever been a time where our tune has damaged or blown a motor. Certainly, if people have blown motors on our tunes, and we always research it and help them diagnose it, and it's never been the result of anything with our tuning.
Yeah, we haven't been able to conclusively find anything that was even remotely close to a calibration issue on where there was we did this with the 3-liter program,
the supercharged 3 liters, which are kind of problematic motors.
They are. Well, that's the thing is they're getting into like the second, third, whatever owners and maintenance histories may not be necessarily known. Parts in general are getting
and the intercoolers are leaking. There's reasons
parts wear out, and then now all of a sudden you're throwing 2 times the power the car started with. And there was what seemed like a rash of people having issues. So we're like, okay, we need to step back and see if this is us or this is what's going on here. And every one of them turned out to be just a component failure or some other mitigating issue that was the root cause of it.
But as a company,
we spent a lot of time, money. We shipped motors here.
Yeah,
and we don't take it lightly. We wouldn't go very far.
We have an excellent track record with the B9 3.0T. These motors are producing more power and torque than these GTI motors. So the good news is Stage 1 tuning is almost never problematic. It's a pretty basic tune as far as stressing and pushing the limits of the motor. We, as a company, across the board with all of our products, we do stand behind our products. We are a company that's accountable to mistakes we make, and we will always do our best to support. There are times when customers ask us to do it, and it's not justified, and we do say no to that, and we will always reserve the right to do that. But every day in customer service, we're making resolutions to customers and trying to make things right for people whenever we've caused a problem. Absolutely.
Honestly, and I mean, you can't always lift the curtain to it, but the customer support guys go, I don't say above and beyond.
No, they do.
I mean, far more than I think almost any other company out there. We do try and make this still a fun and engaging, and we're here. You want to have fun with your car, like that's what we want to do.